Well, good morning, everyone. We've got about 10 participants here so far. We might wait just a few minutes to see if we can get some more tricklers in. I am excited for us to share the the innovative, what you all have been doing at your schools. I know I've been checking in with a few of you over the last couple of weeks. Those have been quite fun, enjoyable conversations. Um, and I hope that you've been having similar conversations around your own school. So I will open us in a quick prayer, um, do maybe just a little background, and then hopefully give you all a chance to share your screens and to share your work. So if you have any of the videos or the slides or the lesson plans, the curriculum that you've made, if you want to access that, get it ready for presentation, you can just do a screen share with the whole crew in a little bit here. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and we will open with prayer as we always do. So we begin in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, may you fill our hearts with the spirit of unity, that we may willingly share our blessings and support one another in our journeys. Guide us to collaborate with humility, recognizing the divine in each person, harnessing our collective strengths for your glory. Inspire us to lead by example, encouraging others to embrace generosity, fostering a community rooted in love and respect. May our lives be a testament to your grace, promoting peace, understanding, and shared purpose, all through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Okay, well, the hope today is that you would take about 5 minutes to share with your classmates here your favorite parts, portions, learnings, adventures that you've had in the world of AI since we started this class, which has been, what, roughly about 5 months ago. So those pieces that you submitted onto Educate Magis, you feel free to share anything from that portion that you submitted or anything else. But the goal is to give you about 5 minutes of share time today. And then we'll just pass it around, pass the mic, pass the camera. I believe everyone has sharing access. One person can share at a time. Do I have any volunteer who'd like to go first today? You can throw up your name in the chat. I think there's a hand raise or a thumbs up reaction. We will give everybody a chance, everybody who's here today. Yes, you can share part of your recording. You can just talk about your experience, but if you want to show the movie in the background, or if you have some slides or you have some materials that you want to talk over, it's your choice. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing or talking about, everyone, I think, will benefit from it. And everyone will get a chance to present.
Having trouble raising my hand, but
Oh, okay.
I'm just putting my hand up. For some reason, I was having trouble with it.
Go for it, Brian. Be our
Okay.
first volunteer.
Okay, my name is Brian Murphy. I'm a math teacher at St. Ignatius College Prep at San Francisco. Uh, my uh, my video quality, I think I wrote a note in there too, is uh, that I'm going to very quickly share, just ever so quickly. So I'm not going to play it because the sound is okay. You can hear me talking. What I was doing was I was walking my AP statistics students through. Um, Let me stop that. I was walking them through an exercise in which I started by generating. Uh, I generated. Well, actually, here's what I'll do. This is the better share um, because this is actually what I put here. Um, this was we're doing residuals for least squares regression line. This is the video, so anyone can watch it. I just linked it to this PDF. This screencast is something this is one I did like 2 years ago on residuals. They're supposed to watch it over a weekend. And so it happened to be over a weekend. So we came in on a Monday and they were first period. And I had generated 5 multiple choice questions using ChatGPT. Um, and the prompt looked like, can everyone see my highlight? Can you see me highlighting this page? Okay. Generated 5 multiple choice questions about residuals of a least squares regression line. And then the thing I added that I did not tell them about that I said is consistent with the AP stats curriculum. And because when I wrote it without saying that, it just threw questions out that college stats kids would get, but not necessarily AP stats kids. There's certain vocabulary that's not in an AP curriculum for statistics. And so I set it up so that they had questions they could do. They sat in pairs. They looked at the 5 questions. They answered them. We discussed the answers, and I had I had checked the questions to make sure they were legit. There were no mistakes or things, errors along the way. And then what I did was I had them sit in their pairs and I had them use an AI bot of their choice, which they had to write down on the unit that they submitted. And they generated their own 5 questions, but I did not tell them about this, the consistent with AP stats curriculum. And so then I let them come up with things, and they were constantly raising their hands going, wait, what's this? Wait, what's this? Wait, what's this? And then we went back, and so I wound up using the term prompt engineering. And I said, now go back and have it generate something according to the AP stats curriculum. And they rewrote their prompt, and they got 5 questions that they breezed through. Um, and then after that, I had one of my bot, I think it was Chat GPT. Yes, it was Chat GPT because I put it in the document. It generated a reflection worksheet based on the prompts that we did. And then they it was based on an exercise that I had already had written up, where I just had some data from some test takers. We were looking at how students did on a recent test based on the hours of sleep they had gotten. That was a discussion I had with some students about 3 years ago, and there's other samples of that online that you could find too. And so I had them do a reflection sheet on that, but I had ChatGPT write the reflection. So they didn't know that part. I just had it write it for me, and then I edited it to see how it would do. But the discussion we had was more about the prompt engineering. And the students really got into it. And a bunch of them had their hands up and said, yeah, I did this with an assignment once. And so it really got into, we had to get back to the residuals lesson, but we really got into a good discussion about using um, using AI for things like this. So we wound up having a really nice discussion. It was a block day, so we had a 70-minute period. So we had time to really break a lot of this stuff down. And then attached in my folder is the reflection sheet, the 5 multiple choice questions I gave them, and a video of really just the 1 minute video I got is a little bit more than a minute. And it's just me explaining how I wanted them to go about their prompting. So I think I hope that's a good summary of it. If everyone gets the gist of what I was after.
Yeah, I really enjoy all the the different prompting directions that you went and how you tried to kind of blend the AI with what you'd already been doing. So
Yeah.
very, very good. Very nice opener. Thank you. Anyone else? Quick questions before we move on? Feel free to throw them in the chat as people are presenting, if you want to share a similar story. All right. Well, thank you, Brian. I very much appreciate it. And it sounds like you reached good success in the classroom on that lesson. Can we get our second volunteer? I can just call on people going down the list here. Or I guess up. Well, let's see here. Mark, I see your hand.
Yeah, hi. It's been a while since I've actually actively Zoomed. So I'm Mark McDougall. I'm an English teacher at Fordham Prep in the Bronx. Let me see if I can quickly figure out how to get it's been a while since I've shared my screen. Video settings, share screen. Did that work? Not work.
Don't see it yet.
Okay. Maybe I'm not ready to do this. Here we go, share. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So where I'm at, I guess, is I have started using AI tools. Are you guys still there? I'm sorry, my computer froze.
Oh, we just see a black screen.
There we go. Mine just caught up. There we go. Okay.
There we go. Yep.
Okay. So I've been using AI, trying to find ways to integrate it into what I'm already doing. So just to kind of situate everybody, I'm teaching a course to sophomores, which we just call advanced honors. And it's thematic. So each quarter we're asking a sort of big question, and the works that we study are designed to help us answer that. So for this quarter, it's how can we foster meaningful relationships in a complex and diverse world. So we are starting with The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. And one of the big questions that we ask of that particular work is what Shakespeare is saying, either intentionally or unintentionally, about race, gender, and sexuality as we go through the play. So every year, usually about the time that we get through the first 3 acts before the big court scene, one of the assignments that I've had students do is collect evidence from the play that could suggest one of 2 possible positions. One, either that Shakespeare sort of fails to rise above some of the bigoted views of his time, or the reverse proposition, which is that even if subtle, that part of what he's doing is really meaning to critique on or question some of those assumptions. So they fill out a chart as a homework assignment where they're collecting quotations, rewriting the quote, and then explaining why they think it's evidence in one of those 2 directions. And then we always have a day where they work in groups, and they have to come to some consensus in groups of 3 or 4 and sort of take a position. So this year, my school has started to think about moving in the direction of Flint. So I think they're currently running a sort of test version of Flint. And so I created, let me see if I can get to the right screen here. If I hit start activity, or start a session, I think we'll see it. I created a role play that is meant to essentially pretend to be Shakespeare, and prepare itself to sort of answer questions or sort of confrontational statements potentially that students have regarding the play. So they were then directed to take some of the quoted materials and things that they had written and basically feed it in, say, hey, what about this moment in the play? How do you explain this particular quote? And so I set it to be like a timed 10-minute activity, just so that there was a sort of window in which we were doing that. And so I had students do that for about 10 minutes. And then we just engaged in some discussion about what they found helpful and either didn't like or were frustrated by with the AI. And then as a next assignment, they all had to write their own short essay sort of defending the position that their group had taken, either that Shakespeare sort of simply reflects some of these prejudices of his time, or that he was doing something else. So that was kind of how the AI factored in. And I think I have the video up, but I have to say, it's not a particularly interesting video. You can see that the kids are just sort of typing, and in some cases they're going back and forth and pasting in quoted materials or statements that they had come up with, responding to their reading of the play.
Mark, would you say that you saw a noticeable difference from previous years in how students engaged with this lesson?
I would, in the sense that this was a sort of additional step, right? So this wasn't really a replacement of something that they had done previously, but I think it worked pretty well as a sort of sounding board for their own thoughts, right? It gave them a sort of test run at working out exactly what their position was. I will say that they were a little frustrated, as was I, just trying to design the thing, in the sense that it would respond but it would only go so far, right? It wouldn't take a position. And part of that is it doesn't want to give a student an answer, but part of it is it also seemed very hesitant to like either forcefully agree or disagree with the statement that a student wrote. And so, I just kind of use that as a teaching moment to say, well, you should focus on those moments and realize that those are really the sticky issues, right? Like it doesn't want to go out on a limb and give you an answer that could go either way. Like those are probably the moments, in the play that you want to be thinking about, right? That aren't obvious. But again, it did have limitations. We had talked about the fact that in Shakespeare's time, Shylock as a Jewish character would have almost certainly had a prosthetic nose or mask and a wig. And whenever you asked anything like that with the AI, it would give you some message like, I can only talk about the play. I refuse to, engage in conversations like that. And so some kids were a little frustrated by that. But again, I just use that as a moment to say, well, so that's obviously something you need to consider, right? It's not an easy canned answer that can be given to you. Like you got to decide what it is exactly that we should take away from it. So
Yeah, it's interesting and redirecting the thinking. Well, good. That looks like a good start to that, and I like how you timed it to the 10-minute warm up, so it didn't kind of overtake the lesson necessarily, but complemented it really well. So thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. We have our volunteer for the next presentation. Chime in, mic in, anything you like.
Sure, I'll go.
All right, let's hear it, Chris.
All right, so let's see. For mine, I teach theology, and let's see if I can pull it up. I teach theology, and I have a senior elective on miracles. All right, is it sharing?
Yes.
Okay, I've got a senior elective on miracles, and so I oftentimes have it to where students just do a research project in groups and they present. I've been using AI every day this year, and so here was one of my classes. Instead of just research an aspect of Our Lady of Guadalupe and present at the end, I put in the information, and here's my prompt. I said, I want some activity with an intro and a purpose. I want them to become experts, and I want to make it fun, right? And I gave it a bunch of information. And then the response was, here we go, broke it up into asked how many groups I could make too. So it said, okay, let's make, this is a team of scientists that want to look at the longevity of Juan Diego's tilma. And they have a purpose and they have a prompt. Imagine you are a team of scientists. And then I have another topic. So I did that, looked good. My back and forth with the AI was, I said, great, now I want to break down with the steps. So it gave me a breakdown of kind of my steps for my class, for my lesson plan. And my back and forth went like that. I went Bloom's objectives and so on and so forth. So built this project over a couple of class periods is what it was going to be. And so that's the chat GPT back and forth. If it's still sharing correctly, my next screen is what I made out of it. And this is sort of the me putting it on paper in a clear way. I made the intro, the purpose, and the prompt for their handout. The next page was AI sort of making a guide for them of how to spend their time wisely. The next page was a step-by-step checklist I had ChatGPT create, and the time frame of how to work it. And then I always make this field report for them. The AI helped me out. Had the prompt up there again, and where they could put their sources, what the key concepts were for what they learned, and so on and so forth. And they were going to present, so I also had it make some instructions for how to make a good presentation. And that's that. Each group got this piece of paper. And so here's the groups in action. So I'll play a little clip of this. It's the same. It's just me walking around, and you can see them working. This is the guys doing their research. with the prompts next to them, and that handout you can see flipping through it. So each team is a group of 3, and they get that class period to do it, and they're presenting the next class period. So that's the basics of what it looked like in class. And then I also had ChatGPT help me out with the rubric. And so this is the rubric that GPT made as well. So great, interactive. The students loved it. I'd say for us, the biggest advantage of using this for me is we've got more creativity in the back and forth instead of just the same routine that I've had, which is research this and then present on it. The expert group piece and the field report and putting it all together with the rubric and everything else just added a lot for their engagement.
Yeah, I love that diversity of content creation that you showed. I think that's huge for opening up teachers as content creators. I can sympathize with the idea of just doing the same routine year after year because it's what you got and it's easy and you don't have 100 hours to create new content. But it looks like, well, how long would you say that took you for all that new content creation?
I don't know. Over time, probably an hour to 2 hours, going back and forth with it and then putting it on paper and printing it out.
Yeah. Yeah, you get to a really nice finished product there. All the steps listed, everything categorized really neatly. It feels like a higher quality of delivery, I think.
Right.
I appreciate that as a teacher.
Sure.
Thank you, Chris. Very nice. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Who's ready for the next presentation?
I can share mine.
Sure. Let's hear it, Danny. Or Sarah, excuse me.
Let me make sure I share my screen. Okay, I can't do it. It says something about security and privacy settings.
Okay.
Let me double check here. We got new laptops at school, so I hope that this works. Let me double check. Here it is. Can you see my document?
Yes.
Awesome. So I teach epibiology. So I asked ChatGPT to give me an idea how to teach a specific topic. It was the introduction to Unit 2, which is cell structure and function, and that's something they've had in 9th grade. So a lot of it was review. What you can see here, I highlighted kind of the prompt, my initial prompt that I put in. Obviously, I teach junior seniors. I would like to spend some time to go over the cell structure and function I used from the College Board and my own. I put in the learning objectives and then what we call essential knowledge in AP chemistry, and was kind of like, plan me a lesson. Just started very broad and was like, let's see what's happening here. And Claude gave me a couple of ideas here, lesson outline, how to go about it, what material is needed. And then I was like, okay, how about we do stations? We could be doing these stations where we compare something, where we have tables, where we have graphics. What would that look like? And so I kept like narrowing it down. I was like, I read your lesson. I would rather have stations. And it gave me stations and gave me suggestions for stations for each of these different topics. Which I liked, but wanted to have, again, a little bit more from it. So can you make a suggestion for a station that is specifically about structure and function of mitochondria and chloroplasts? So then I kept like going more and more specific. It gave me information about that. I asked it more specifically for material to provide for me. And all the way at the end, I don't even want to go through the whole thing because it was, as you can see, quite a process here. I wanted it to see if it could give me cases. So I decided in one of my stations, I would like to have cases that the students read and where they have to interpret what cell organelle is defective. And that is what I then recorded actually and uploaded. So students were working on these case studies here, discussing what is happening with the cell, what is the issue. And Here you can see this, my students working at those lab tables with those stations. They were able to do a little bit of research on their own about the case, but also use the cases it provided from the stations. And then Aldi went, and I did ask it to rewrite it, a couple of them, because I was a little bit unhappy with the way it was phrased. And then I asked it for an exit ticket that I used in my class. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's really good interactivity. I notice you were fine-tuning it there at the end, trying to get exactly the right feel for your class and putting more of the human touch on the end, which I think is imperative for people who want this to be blended into their design process and not just replacing their design process. So I really like that human touch that you added in on each of those promptings. That's good detail that I think a lot of new beginners with AI kind of skip over. So do you think, have you found yourself duplicating this process in future planning sessions?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because sometimes I start very broad, but I actually know what I want. So then I kind of be like, okay, like I did here, like give me an idea. And I'm like, no, I actually want stations. I actually know what I want. And then it's
Yeah.
just small things where I am looking to get a little bit more, hey, write me a case. Or hey, here is a problem. Can you give me an answer key for it? So I think the whole lesson planning is a little bit too much. I'm looking more for like bits and pieces where it can help me just taking off some of the workload to create new materials.
Love it. Thank you very much, Sarah. Appreciate it. Okay, looking at the chats. Danny, you ready next? And then George on deck.
Sure. Give me just a second here. All right, can you all see the document?
Yep, looks good.
All righty, can I see the document? Okay, this is a bit of a redesign from a project that I had done a couple years, or this is my third year at Brophy. So this was my first year we did something not nearly exactly the same. Originally, we had them work in Minecraft to design one of the islands in the Odyssey, using the text as inspiration for their design. And ultimately, that came with a lot of bandwidth challenges. And a lot of like sharing issues, because even though there's like a share space in Minecraft where they can collaboratively build things, it crashed all the time. So this year, back to the Odyssey, and I wanted to keep the game component, but I didn't want to mess around with all that because we lost several days of time just dealing with like technical issues. So the idea that I had over the summer was I wanted them to design their own game. Obviously, that would take a lot of time too, but with the advent of AI, I figured it can like kind of speed up the process and at least get them to something that they could pitch as a solid idea. And so that's kind of where we're at now. Full disclosure, I haven't gotten to the piece yet where the kids have actually started playing with the AI to design the game. Some stuff got pushed back. But this is the general kind of outline of what we're doing. It was ChatGPT helped me put this together. Like I knew certain things that I wanted to do already. So kind of like Sarah, I had some parameters and like, here's the things that I definitely want to include, especially a couple of days where they just played like board games and card games and figured out some of the mechanics, where they did some research on different game genres. So that's kind of all the first week. Then getting into reading the Odyssey and annotating it, but specifically thinking about game design and how that overlaps with literary elements. So this is the general outline of kind of what we're in the process of doing. They're just finishing up reading the Odyssey right now, and they're going to get into designing the game. Hopefully we'll have time for presentations, but again, we had some hiccups along the way. So I'm going to stop sharing that document and we'll show you the design, the game design assignment, which was also created with the assistance of ChatGPT. So there's this guy. And this gives them the parameters. They can choose any type of game they want. There's certain requirements in terms of literary elements they have to include or reference to, and depending upon the type of game they pick, the different literary elements they choose will be different. So if you're doing a board game, you're probably going to have some sort of path with different like locations on it. So setting's a little bit more important. If you're doing a role-playing game, characterization is going to be more important. All of them are required to include goals, stakes, and obstacles, because those are three components that both books, narratives, and games both have. According to Jean Luen Yang, who does create both things. And then they also have to have the basic of game mechanics and gameplay, and they'll create a proposal and a pitch. There's an outline for that, including the way that they're allowed to use AI, a list of resources, then what they're submitting and what the evaluation criteria is going to be. So they are in the process right now of doing the brainstorming part of this, where they're reading and like just kind of getting their own ideas down. And then not this week, because we have a really short week. We're on fall break for the next 2 days. But when we come back the week after, they'll actually get into getting to play with the AI that I've created. So the video that I have is me playing with it, just trying to get a handle on it. I don't have them working with it, but I will drop, if you guys want to play with it, the chatbot into the chat. I've been playing around with it to try to create a like a tabletop role-playing game, and asked it. The first thing that it generated was like all of the kind of character building mechanics from Dungeons and Dragons. And so I talked to it and was like, hey, this seems like a little bit like plagiarism. Could we come up with some different mechanics for character design? It's been really helpful in that sort of like collaboration space where it gives, oh, sorry, how do I fix that?
I don't know, but you're welcome to fix it. I'll try it again in a moment. I just want to point out that I love everything about the choice that this gives to your students, the flexibility, to take it in their own direction, and also the presentation component at the end of that. I noticed that's something that I've been actually trying out a lot in my computer science class this year, is adding a presentation component for every single unit, that the students have to then speak about what they've been thinking about. And that's something I'm probably going to come back to at the end of class here if there's time left, and just talk a moment about that. But yeah, love the creativity that goes into this. Really nice.
Thanks.
Okay, George, you want to go ahead and get set up? And Danny, just maybe in the chat, if you can get that link working, I'd love to check it out.
Sure. Let me just share my screen here. Okay. All right, I'm George Mitsoka. I'm the director of the Innovation Center at Regis Jesuit High School. And I teach a class called Maker Lab. And in Maker Lab, we do primarily 3D design. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
This is a CAD drawing. This is of a nameplate and a stand for a nameplate. And normally we do things in 3D, and then we'll either 3D print it, but some items like this, because all the pieces are flat, we'll actually laser cut these. And unfortunately, our 3D app can't directly output in a format that the laser cutters we have understand. So we use a different application called Inkscape, and this has been one of my least favorite parts of this class, because the Inkscape application is this is the UI for it. It's a vector drawing program. It's open source, and unfortunately, it's just not very intuitive how to use it. And so I would spend quite a long time giving instructions on this, on how to use it. And the assignment we would give would be pretty simple. It's design a laser cut nameplate. There's some specs in here, and they're supposed to end up with something that looks like this. So the name and a title in a vector file that we can output, and the laser can cut this. And this is the same assignment I've used for this class, but for this time I created an AI assistant using Flint, and this is a student session, and he did some smart stuff. So he started the session, and the tutor is set up for the specific assignment. It knows what the assignment is, and it has a surprising it surprised me how much it knew about Inkscape without me telling anything about it. So it knew how to use Inkscape. It knew how to give instructions on Inkscape. This student just pasted the instructions for assignment right into the chat as a question, and he got step-by-step instructions on how to create his nameplate. And he was successful. And here's what he turned in. And this meets all the requirements and is of higher quality than most of the stuff I used to get from students on their first try. And he didn't ask me any questions, and that was the best part about this whole experience. Was I basically gave the entire class I pointed them to the tutor. I showed them what the assignment was, and they just went, and I got almost no questions. Whereas before I would be constantly explaining to every student over and over again pretty much the same instructions, because when they're focused on working on their own piece, they're not at all paying attention to what you're telling any other student. So I would get the same questions over and over again, and that just totally went away when I introduced this Flint tutor. So that was fantastic. And then after we completed this unit, I put out a survey asking them if they used the AI and how they liked it. And this is really representative of what all the students said. Yes, they used it. They didn't know anything about Inkscape before. They tried some other things, like they might have looked up YouTube videos or just done web search, but the AI was more helpful. And they were happy with how it worked and how it turned out. So I was happy. The students were happy. Setting up the Flint tutor took very little time because it had so much embedded knowledge about Inkscape already. And so it was just a huge time saver. And I think this was hugely successful. Before I go, I also wanted to show this little experiment I did with Claude. I found the artifacts to be really fascinating. So I asked to create a game of life with a user interface, and it just did it, created a web version that runs in the browser, and it just worked. And this was maybe 20 minutes of work, including generating and modifying all the UI. I can ask it to clear the screen, create a random seed, turn on or off the color coding, pause in single step through this. And this is something I've kind of always wanted to do, but this would have taken weeks of coding if I had done it by hand, and literally 15 to 20 minutes, it just worked. So I just wanted to show that off.
Very cool. Yeah, I love, and the very first thing I ever used ChatGPT for was the IT support, the tech support for using sites that I was unfamiliar with, anything online that I'd never done before. And so for you to give that to students, it's such a huge help, and it saves so much headache, I think, both from the teacher and the student perspective. No student wants to sit there with their hand up for the whole class, waiting for their teacher to get around to them to do one fix, and then they go back to struggling again. So I love that side-by-side personal assistant that each kid now gets, and especially when it comes to things that they're unfamiliar with. It is the most help, it seems, in areas where we are the least experienced. For our kids, that's most places. For teachers, we don't get to experience that as often. And that game of life stuff, super fun. I wish I had more time to tinker with the coding aspects. I've been mostly using it for education purposes, but I love those personal projects when I have the time for it. Thank you very much, George. Do we have someone on deck here for our next presenter?
I can go next.
Okay. And yes, Danny, that link seems to work. Thank you. Go ahead, Gilbert.
Hi, my name is Gil Stockson. I am a campus minister and theology teacher at Loyola School in New York City. And I used Claude in trying to design a lesson. I went pretty small scale in comparison to some of the other projects that have been presented. So this was just a single class, single activity. Maybe I should have expanded it more, but this is what I did. And I used Claude to create something. I teach a course on social justice, and one of the concepts, we're working through the concept of the common good. And one of the things that I always find challenging is to help students understand in a practical and personal way the way in which we kind of all exist in a web of interdependence and interrelationship. And I think that's one of the key concepts for understanding the common good from the perspective of Catholic social teaching. So I just presented this to Claude and did some back and forth, and it came up with a few ideas how to create something that will help impress this notion on them and help them to work with that. And it was went through a few iterations. The first activity I felt like seemed a little too young for the students that I have. It was like tossing yarn across the room at each other and just mentioning different connections. And I was like, seems a little too simplistic. And there was a whole bunch of ideas that it generated on looking at scripture passages, a whole bunch of ideas on looking at case studies and those kinds of things. And I felt as though it didn't really, I was looking for something a little more personally reflective for the students to do to make it real to their own experience rather than something that was out there for them. So after some back and forth, Claude came up with an idea that I liked, which was this idea of creating a personal network map and making it like a web to show the ways in which you exist in connection with other people in your life. And so I ran with that, and Claude was able to create a nice handout for me explaining how students can do this, complete with instructions and reflection questions to reflect on afterward. And I tinkered with them, but essentially used the handout that Claude created. It was great to use that artifact feature, made it relatively easy for me, and implemented it in class, gave students a chance to work on their own personal network map during class, and then to have small group discussions followed by a large class discussion around some reflection questions. What surprised you about your network? How would your life be different without these connections? Those kinds of things. And I did try to engage, and it worked well, actually, the extended challenge that I came up with, which was this idea of looking at one particular item in your life and trying to determine how many people were involved in allowing you to use that item. How does that item connect you to others? And put up some examples of some of my students' work on this, which hopefully you can see. Hopefully it's coming through on the screen share. I felt as though recording them in class might make them a little bit shy, since this was a discussion activity, and it also proved a little technologically challenging. So I actually just recorded myself introducing how to do this lesson. Hopefully that's okay, but I'm happy to play for you a little bit of that recording that I did. Hopefully everyone can see this. Let's see. It's been a while since I was doing Zoom shares, but I believe there is a way to optimize for video. Yeah, here we go. Ooh, my screen sharing is paused. Hold on 1 second. Okay, here we go. As we just reviewed, from the perspective of Catholic social teaching, the human person has a social nature. Now I would like to give you a chance to see how this applies in your own life by asking you to create a personal network map. This exercise is designed to help you see how you live in a web of interdependence, relying on others while they also rely on you. To explain what I want you to do, I'm going to show you part of my personal network map. So for step 1, you're going to write your name in the center of your paper, just as I've done here. Step 2, you're going to create a web diagram of your personal network and include family members,
friends, teachers or mentors, bosses, community members such as coaches or religious leaders, service providers such as doctors, local businesses you frequent, and online communities or social media connections. For each connection you add, note on your web diagram how this person or group contributes to your life and how you contribute to this person or group's life. So for instance, I've written my kids, Luke and Francis, over here, and I've tried to capture how they contribute to my life and also how I contribute to their life. And I've used the arrows to show in which direction it's going. I've also included Mr. D'Angelo because I work with him and the ways in which I think I provide benefits to him and the ways in which he benefits me as well. Lastly, I want to invite you to challenge yourself to think beyond obvious connections. Consider indirect relationships, such as the farmers who grow your food or the factory workers who make your clothes, as well as the people involved in maintaining infrastructure that you use, such as roads, bridges, or subways. So, for example, I've included here a train operator who drove the subway car that I rode on my way into school today, and also the ways in which I think I've benefited from this, and the ways I think I've benefited him as well.
I think we can
So
pause
with
there,
that,
Gil. That's
I'll
a
ask
good
you.
demonstration. Did you use the AI to come up with the script at all for the video making, or was it mostly just the project itself, the foundation?
No, it was just the project itself. I came up with the script for the video making. Yeah, and I think for me, one of the things that I've taken away from the class certainly is this idea of like AI as a thought partner, and I felt like I was able to do that with this project. And I think my students appreciated the project and definitely were able to kind of personalize and understand the way in which this concept applies in their own lives. So I like doing it.
Yeah,
So
I like
pretty small thing, but I think it was nice.
I like the iterative process. You talked about that. You talked about this bouncing of ideas and circling back and circling back. And that's really the design philosophy I've been trying to give to people when they're talking about how do I work with AI? Do I just have it make everything for me? It's like, no, you have a conversation. That's really what it is. It's a back and forth. So I think it's a great demonstration of that. Thank you, Yale.
Thanks.
We've got, I think, 2 more still to present. We have a next volunteer.
I can jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
All right. So Brian Lorenzen, also from Loyola, doing back-to-back in the same building. And so let me share. What I ended up doing was building off that iterative process you were just saying, I did a ton of uploading my own lesson plans into Claude and having it just sort of critique my writing. What did it think was strengths, weaknesses, how I could add to it. And one of the lessons I did, and let me see if I can pull up our conversation while I do this, is a lesson where my 9th grade research skills class actually got to use Claude to revise their own research questions. And I think I'm sharing. You're looking at a Claude chat, if everything is working well. And so as I went through this whole conversation, it was giving me a lot of things. I was uploading websites, kind of build my course around the Stripling model of inquiry, if anyone's familiar. It's awesome. But then uploading that and then existing lesson PDFs, and it was spitting back stuff. It gave me strengths, suggestions for enhancements, and eventually what the lesson I built and filmed, and that I don't trust myself to hit play on because it has crashed Zoom like 4 times, me trying to pull up anything with video on this machine. But this lesson plan here, where they did peer feedback, they wrote a research question and had peers go back to back and sort of identify using a set of criteria we identified what they thought of this research question and how it can be improved. And then I had them do the exact same process with an AI assistant of their choice. And we got better research questions out of it, but it was really interesting kind of having the students compare their feedback from their peers versus AI. And in a lot of ways, the AI feedback, was a lot better than their peer feedback because the AI was already good at what we were asking it to do versus their peers, which is something that they were just practicing on. And I think we ended up getting a real lot of improvement on the sort of questions that they were asking and kind of getting things that would build into real research projects, not kind of simple factual questions or opinion-based things that it was able to, the chatbot was able to root out by and large. And that's it. It was a pretty good experience overall. I think the kids enjoyed it, and they got to see, I think, a really good use case for AI for themselves in a way that is, I think, consistent with, you know, kind of the lessons we're trying to teach them and how to use it ethically.
Yeah, that looks like a wonderful start to the research process. Are you planning to use AI tools during the research itself, or was this mostly restricted to the question generation?
So I'm looking to add other opportunities to use AI. I think it is, and from my kids' experience, a really, really good editor where, hey, we've done all this stuff, put it in there, what's missing, what can I add, and having them use it as a sounding board that has, you know, a reasonable amount of expertise in what they're trying to do in the same way that, like, you know, we're building on having that sounding board, that iterative process you were talking about, sort of centering that kind of AI activities for the kids.
Yeah. Awesome. Love it. Looks like a strong start. Do we have another volunteer who has not gone yet?
I'll jump in.
Okay.
My name's Andy Mazzolini. I teach at Brophy College Prep, and this is almost the first morning that I've been able to sit outside because it's been so hot in the so it's beautiful out here right now. Any case, what I've done this year is concentrate on Flint, because the school sort of bought into it at the end of last year. And so my dedication has been to try to write tutorials each week for my honors chemistry kids. So I've gotten a lot of good ideas from your presentations for sure. But let me share what I did put into what I uploaded.
You want to maybe just describe, if we can't get the screen share to work?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so basically what I've done is this was a tutorial of clue sets. So what I've done for the atomic model is I sort of worked with the AI. I used mainly Claude to write clue sets for the historical formulation of different models. And so these clue sets were basically, you know, at the beginning of the atomic theory of 1803, and then into J.J. Thomson and the plum pudding model, and then Rutherford's basically solar system model. And I gave the students just not the models themselves, but the hints or the experiments that went into the models. They had to generate their own models themselves on whiteboards and things along those lines. So what I've had basically Flint do, I uploaded all those clue sets into Flint, and I had the students basically quiz themselves on these clue sets, because they were about to take a test on those clue sets. And at the end of that, I gave them about 10 minutes to do that. And at the end of that, I said, okay, now create 5 multiple choice questions to help you study further these details in this material. And so they did that, and we talked about the multiple choices. We talked about their interactions with Flint, and it was pretty positive. The quiz turned out great. Most of them got, 85% or higher. And so it definitely worked and in terms of reviewing. And I've done that each week in different topics. and they seem to be really catching on to both reviewing material and also asking for help on that material as well. So I am trying to write a game. I'm really motivated by, the game aspect of chemistry. So trying to deal with that. I ran into the same problems that Danny had with some of the clunkiness of, I started with Dungeons and Dragons because that's my game, but it was too complex, so had to sort of scale that down. But I'm really impressed with the whole game idea, so I'm going that way.
Yeah. No, you should keep pursuing that. I think there's a lot of potential that's unexplored. And I think this time next year, a lot of teachers will come up with some crazy, cool, clever ideas and hopefully be able to share them all. I mean, that's the beauty of Flint is you can just make it public once you have a good one.
Right.
Same with the ChatGPT as Danny showed with her link. Awesome. James, do you want to go? I think you're the only one left. We got about 3 minutes. You can give us
Okay, I'm going to keep it real short. I had my students, when at the end of a unit, take Post-it notes and write a question. They were each asked to write some question related to our learning unit. I then put all the Post-it notes on a whiteboard, the class whiteboard, took a picture of it and uploaded the picture to Gemini and said, please summarize the answers. And overall, it was really good, surprisingly good. I thought we would get responses all over the place, but it was largely accurate. One of the exercises was, hey, students, do you notice anything that Gemini made a mistake on? And there were a couple like little things.
Oh, sorry. Your audio just.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And then the other caveat is the depth. Sometimes in answering questions that AI would go too deep or too shallow, too surface level. And so it part of the exercise was to evaluate the responses from the AI. And anyway, thank you.
How'd your students appreciate that, being able to judge the AI?
I think they liked it. The novelty was certainly a big part of it. But yeah, they liked being the expert, being able to judge the AI, and they learned as well. So it was very good. I'll do it again for sure.
Yeah, I love those little things, those little life improvements, hacks that AI can offer. I think that's a nice, easy way in. You just pick the one thing that you're like, if this were just a little easier, it'd be really fun, or if it weren't so much work. No, I don't believe you need a subscription to upload pictures. I've done it with the free Gemini accounts. Just any Google account will do. And before we go, speaking of Google accounts, I'll end by sharing my screen again. If y'all haven't seen this, this is a tool that is taking the internet by storm. I told my school about it. This is called Google's Notebook LM. So it's notebooklm.google.com. Something you can do here, upload YouTube videos, audio transcripts, up to 500,000 words, and it summarizes all of them at once in this nice little contained format. And then it creates a custom podcast for you if you'd like. You might have seen these already. They're floating around TikTok and YouTube.
YouTube transcript, and AI expert Daniel Missler talking about Human 3.0.
Intriguing. Human 3.0. So what's the upgrade this time?
Well, he paints a picture.
Anyway, those are entirely AI-generated voices. It takes about 5 minutes, and it'll create this nice little custom podcast. Great for reviewing content for your kids or just summarizing like a 3-hour YouTube video or podcast that you want just a 10-minute blurb that talks about the whole thing. It is free, currently free, Notebook LM. It also gives you an interactive way to talk to all of these documents and materials. So I thought I'd share that with you because I really think this has a lot of potential for teachers. It creates study guides, FAQs, tables of content. It mass collects a whole bunch of information. So I'll throw that in there as my final parting gift to all of you. I hope you've really enjoyed the class. I've really enjoyed these conversations. You guys are inspiring with all the work that you're doing. And I hope you continue to participate in these courses in the future. I know the Jesuit Network plans to offer one every year. So check in with your principal about next year's. It's already in the works, I'm sure. Kristen can send out more information on that. But that is our time for today. So I thank you all for joining us and appreciate your contributions to the course.
Thank you so much, Spencer.